What year did you enter the service?
1944 initially.
Okay. But you were in the Army during World War II?
Yes.
Correct. What units were you with?
I was with the 84th Infantry Division
Okay. And you left the Army what year?
in 1946.
Okay. And what year did you join the Air Force?
I think it was 1960. I had 2 tours in Vietnam.
Okay. And what year did you leave the Air Force?
And, I think it was in 2003. I don't remember. I had almost 30 years altogether.
It's okay. It's okay. And what was your final rank?
E-5 Master Sergeant.
Where were you born and raised, sir?
I was born in Radnor County, Tennessee, and basically I was raised in McDonald, Tennessee. That's near Chattanooga.
Was there a history of military service in your family?
Yes, I had two brothers that were in the service. One was in the Air Force, and 8th Air Force in England, and the other was in the Army in the Quartermaster Corps. And he ended up serving in Guam. So I had the 2 brothers.
How did you hear the news about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor?
As I recall, it's probably a little field cold radio that we managed to have, and which one of my older brothers had gotten hooked up, and that was it. So at that time we were fortunate to have a radio.
Right. What was your reaction to that news?
Well, actually, I guess with a lot of other people, I was wanting to do what I was patriotic, and I wanted later, to be doing my share.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
When were you drafted?
In August of '44.
Where did you do your training?
At Camp Blanding, Florida, near Jacksonville, Florida. I had 17 weeks of infantry training. I remember that how tough the old top sergeant was. He called me various names that I wasn't acquainted with. He was tough. He wanted to toughen us up, he said. I did a pretty good job.
Did you feel like you were a different person after those 17 weeks?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Sure did. It was interesting, and actually, I'd seen a lot of guys that dropped out, for one reason or another, couldn't take it. But I had a positive attitude, and I usually felt like a beast of burden, but I toughened it out and I made it okay. And I had been acquainted with some of the. I was active in the Boy Scouts earlier. We had some training, for close order drill, and all this, and so that was a good background for to get started with. And I always had probably a .22 rifle, and I was good at shooting, so I came through all that part real good. Almost expert. And so that was it. But now, it was some tough training, the infantry training, and but I didn't have too many problems with it. But probably I was probably we are all about the same boat, But so one thing that I remember about it was we had a hurricane while I was there. They had to take shelter, and what's commonly called a latrine. You know, it was pretty well built, and so that was an interesting part of it.
When did you and the 84th Infantry Division head to Europe to fight in World War II?
It would have been, I don't remember the exact date, but early January 45. The 84th Infantry was just wrapping up the Battle of the Bulge, and that's where I joined them in Belgium. And then after we regrouped, so to speak, we moved on into Germany, to Linz in Germany on the Ruhr River. And that's where later on that we made the assault on into Germany, because, you know, at that time the rivers had been flooded. We had to wait till the conditions were favorable till we crossed that first river. They lost a lot of men, and in my company and in my platoon, I felt like I was a replacement to a guy that was severely injured and had to be hospitalized, and kind of filled his shoes, so to speak. And incidentally, he passed away just recently, and I'd had the privilege of visiting him, Jim Sterner. He lived to meet this. I think it passed. It was just close to his 100th birthday. And I recall that when he returned to our Company K of the 333rd Infantry Regiment, how sharp looking he was, and in comparison with us, he still had some Class A uniform or something on. We became good friends, and so that was an interesting aspect of it, that we became friends, and I was able to visit him sometime before he passed away in Pennsylvania. That's just one thing that I remember well. So some guys remember and sometimes you don't.
Sure.
So you don't.
Sure. Where were you positioned in the battle in the Ruhr Valley?
Well, we made the initial crossing at Linz. Maybe I mentioned that. It's on the Ruhr River, and then the first headed after we crossed the Ruhr and headed on into Germany. We very shortly afterwards, we met some. There was still some stiff resistance, and we met part of it. They've been called in, and all that. Actually, it was the last ditch stand for them, but a lot of them they were secured, and I think we kind of stumbled on them, and they let us know about it. But we lost about 5 men that taken this next little town of Hart, Hardt, in Germany, and I just recall, that maybe a previous afternoon, I'd met up with another fellow. We were taking a break after a long hike, and got acquainted with him. And the next day, when we headed out, he got killed. As I say, there was still a lot of resistance there. So I remember that got to me. That impressed me. But now I was in the fourth platoon, where we had 30 caliber machine guns and 60 millimeter mortars and so forth, and so that's the group that I was with, and while we were at Linz, we lived in bombed out cellars, and during the day we had to move a time or two because they were shooting us. They would knock out where we was, and we'd had to have a night there for quite some time. We had a dugout near the river out there, and we'd exchange machine gun fire with them, and so that was kind of when I initially found out that I was actually in combat.
How do you describe combat? How would you describe the combat you experienced?
Well, really, I don't. I got acquainted with it just about the time I was talking about, because after we pretty well secured this town of Hart, I was designated to go back across the field where we were short of ammunition. We had to go back over there to get some ammunition. I think that's something that happened pretty frequently, because a lot of us new troops, especially, I guess, kind of just did a lot of shooting and wasted ammunition. But now there was a sniper that hastened our trip across where we had our Jeep, with ammunition and parked, and so we had to zigzag, We made it over there okay. I remember one of my buddies said, "I'm not going back across there. We'll get killed." And but I said, "We'll get killed if we stay here, because all the shrapnel was coming in with tree bursts, I said, "There's 6 of one and a half dozen the other." We made it back okay. So that was pretty exciting.
What does it sound like? What does battle sound like?
Oh, yeah, that's really a big part of it, I think, the sounds, because of all the different weapons that are being used, artillery and what they call the screaming mimes, and so forth. So, I think that was psychologically that had a big effect. I think that I never did. I've been scared, but I still had my wits about me. I think I did a good training. But it was pretty awesome. And I can tell people, I say, I'm glad to be anywhere.
How would you describe the German soldiers?
Well, actually, we so they were, a lot of them were ready to give up, but they didn't have any option, I don't think, because Hitler had ordered them to the last stand, for the fatherland. But a lot of them did. But they were tough. We did, and of course, after we made our river crossing, they were, hundreds of them that had surrendered. They were good. They were good soldiers, and most of them were probably, I think, were at that time pretty well demoralized.
What do you think gave you the advantage? Why were you able to succeed?
I think that, because overall we've had a numerical superiority, and then, from a personal standpoint, I just wanted to survive a little longer and get home.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Well, so after you crossed the Ruhr, where did you go then?
Well, there's several more towns and several more rivers to cross. With my company, I can remember maybe some large towns that we had in Dalton, and then later on we went to Hanover. Actually, I stayed with them until we met up with the Russians up on the Elbe River.
Did you face a lot of resistance crossing the Rhine?
Well, as you probably remember, that we were fortunate at getting that one bridge up at the Morgan, which really kind of hastened the end of the war. We were fortunate to get that. I crossed around at another place, but a couple of years ago I went back over there and I teamed up with another fellow that crossed. He was with me, but I was in the infantry. He was in the artillery outfit, and he crossed at the Rhine, and he was with me. Went back to Linnich where we crossed there, and I went up with him where he crossed the Rhine and moved on into Germany. That was interesting, and so yeah, and then some of the there's of course several other towns. I think probably the first time after we got squared away, the first time we in Hanover, I think it was a big German town, that had been heavily bombed and so forth. But that's the first time we had a place that even though the phone was still hooked up, we had a bathroom in there, and I was pretty luxurious. But that's got to get beside the point.
So what was it like to meet the Russians at the Elbe River?
Well, I was up there, but I never did. I couldn't keep up with them drinking that vodka. I didn't have much to do with them. We were apparently at that point. My unit was on guard duty with our commanding general, General Bailey. He was the commander of the 84th Division, and so it was just kind of routine duty then, standing guard and so forth.
When you met them at the river, was that a sign to you that the war would be over soon?
Well, really, I guess we didn't slow up long enough to think about it, really. I remember, and I've still got the letters, that were back and forth to home, and I thought, well, it's really, I said, it's hard to believe sometimes, but I said, it's a beautiful country over here, and we're moving pretty swiftly through it, because even somewhere in Germany, you didn't indicate, where you was or anything, but now, it was quite an overall experience, and I was glad that really acted. In the first place, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be put in the infantry, and I had a choice, because I told her my brother was 8th Air Force in England, and I wanted to be a flyboy. I think it was more glamorous, but I said, I told the doctor, you can't put me in infantry, I got flat feet. And I said, I think the doctor was deaf, he didn't pay attention to it, that's what I ended up in. And I was glad I did, because we had a closeness, a camaraderie, and it was different later on for the Air Force.
How did you hear that the war was over in Europe?
That's a good question. I remember it, but I don't remember what how I heard it. I know that, I just remember it was a time of jubilation. I mean, we kind of had a party, big party.
I bet. I would have too. How long did you stay in Europe on occupation duty?
I left the infantry unit, and I was assigned to base finance, carried the finance, and did the military pay and so forth. And I was reassigned to another unit in Germany, in Bachmann, to a 88th Finance Dispersing Unit. And that's where I was when it was my turn, to head back home. And that was just about a few months.
What were your duties? What were your occupation duties in that new unit?
It was basically military pay, payroll stuff, getting the troops paid.
Well, you were popular then.
Yeah, actually, I had finished high school. I had some education. A lot of us guys that were drafted, they didn't. A lot of them didn't have high school education even, and so a lot of them came in to the service from the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and so I thought that was to my advantage that I was managed to finish, through high school before I had to leave.
Now, years later, you joined the Air Force, correct?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to join the Air Force?
Well, I didn't. The war in Korea was going on, and I didn't want to go to Korea. One of my buddies that I was close to in my company K went to Korea and got killed. There, he stayed in the Army. I got out of the Army. So I volunteered for anywhere in England, going the opposite direction. And I got an assignment in England, and then later on, that's where I didn't know at the time, but that's where I met my wife to be.
That was a good assignment then.
Yeah, it was. It turned out good. My children are glad that I married their mother.
And what was your role in the Air Force?
Still, like I mentioned, in the comptroller field, for the most part, it was in accounting and finance. And then later, and that included back in Vietnam, and budget and so forth, working with the Vietnamese. I was stationed in Saigon at the time. Our headquarters was in Wheeler back in Hawaii. But so we worked with the Vietnamese. That's the Air Force support group, and that was interesting. But I never did. I never did learn to speak in the Vietnamese. Now we had worked with Vietnamese and so forth. So that was interesting duty. And most time, but anywhere in Vietnam, you didn't know really. Sometimes you didn't know where the front was. You could get killed anywhere. But I remember one occasion that my experience was that I actually in my job I had to go to, I think somebody was re-enlisting, and I was auditing the paperwork. They had to go to personnel to get some additional information. And just as I left to head back to my place, a rocket came in. It killed the guy I was talking to, a staff sergeant, and knocked out the whole corner of that building. And that was a close call. And so you never knew that those rockets were coming in. And then later my job included visiting a lot of outlying activities, bases that make some inspections and stuff. So there was always this element of danger, but I managed to get through them. And I had to do a good bit of flying. I had to arrange that I had to make reports back to my boss, Major Beasley, and so he never did go with me. I had to call base operations to get whatever kind of plane was available, going to whichever base I was going to go to check with and make arrangements myself. Sometimes it'd be on maybe a Navy plane, maybe usually a C-123 or a 130, different kind of plane, for transportation, and that was an interesting job too. It was so that's some interesting experiences.
For sure. Tell me a little bit more about that rocket attack. How close were you again when it hit, and what did you do after it hit?
I just I had to regroup myself, but it was just a short distance back to the finance office there, and actually pretty soon they sealed it off. The police were there and sealed that area off, and later on they named that person. They named it after the sergeant that got killed.
When the World War II soldiers came home, they were treated as heroes. Vietnam soldiers were not in many cases. What was that difference like? How did you look at that?
Well, really, I didn't. When I came home after Vietnam, I don't remember, being. Well, there was a lot of protesters, weren't there? And I don't remember having to be spit on or anything, and all the stuff that went on. It didn't cause me any apprehension or concern. I'm just glad to get off there and head on back to Tennessee.
Now, I want to talk to you about a couple of things that have happened more recently. You mentioned one of them. You've been back to Europe several times now, and back at some of the places that you were while you were serving. What was it like to be back at those places?
It was, kind of, things had changed a good bit, of course, like on the Royal River where we crossed at Cletis, it seemed wider then. Basically at the same place where we crossed. Well, to start out with, on the crossing from my unit, we'd been had defensive positions there for some time, and at first we was going to go head back the opposite direction to the next town for a little rest, and about the time we got back there, maybe had a cup of coffee and some cigarettes, we got orders to head back. We was going to follow up and get on across the river. We didn't get that rest, and just you never knew what would happen. But that was part of it too. And so it was exciting, as I say. It was, of course, everything had changed considerably, but it was exciting to go back and to be able to have the opportunity to go back in the first place and stay there. So on that trip, we were able to, to visit a lot more places in Belgium and Bastogne. Got to visit Bastogne, where we had a lot of paratroopers who got mowed down by the Germans, and then that would go through some museums there. So that was a very interesting trip. We got to tour a lot of places at that time, other than where we crossed that river.
And the people are still very appreciative.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going back over there on the 1st of June. I'll be going back to, we'll be flying direct from Atlanta, Georgia to Deauville, which is near Omaha Beach, where we'll be going. But so that's going to be interesting. This is the 80th anniversary coming up, isn't it? And the Best Defense Foundation is sponsoring this. The main one, Delta Airlines and Michelin, and a couple more big ones are supporting this trip. I think it's about 50 World War II veterans will be going back. I just tell myself something, though. One of my mottos is keep on keeping on. And of course, I live by myself. Now, this is incidental, but it's not one of your questions. But I had to self-motivate myself. I said, if it's to be, it's up to me. I had to think positive and just keep on going. That's my plan.
It's working. It's working. You also got an ice cream flavor named after you. How did that happen?
I don't know how you found out about that, but it's true. Yeah, my caretaker, my escort previously, Doug Harper, he was from Oregon. We became real close. So he retired. I think he was a physical therapist or something for a long time. He retired. This had been a dream of his, and so he's got his shop in Medford, Oregon, and I had the opportunity to go out there and visit. Yeah, so he named it's butter pecan, by the way, my favorite ice cream. He made the ice cream after me, and I keep in touch with him too. Yeah, that's kind of a byproduct of all this.
That's fantastic. I love that. Just a couple more questions for you, Mr. Bailey. What are you most proud of about your service?
Well, that I went, I served, I did my duty, and I survived, and I'm just, of course, that's meaningful. And as a part of the duty, I took advantage of the GI Bill later and improved my education. I usually took some courses at the University of Maryland while I was in service and while I was in the Air Force. And then later on I went to a college back home and got a degree and so forth. So having the benefit of that GI Bill meant a lot too, by having been in the service like that.
And lastly, sir, what does it mean to you to have the American Veterans Center record and share your story?
Well, that's it's kind of mind-boggling. I don't know how to answer that. but really, I don't ever think, I haven't told you anything that's untrue. I don't think. I try to stick to facts, but I get to rambling a lot of times to get off the subject. Maybe you don't appreciate that, but inwardly it gives me a chance to regroup a little bit. And
how important is it to you for younger generations to know what happened?
You know, that's important too. It's like the Best Defense Foundation that I've mentioned. That's one of their objectives, to make sure that, you know, particularly World War II veterans that are not forgotten, and that the lessons learned are passed on down to the next generation, and that's a big benefit of it. Is evident that, you know, there's the outpouring and the numbers and all the enthusiasm of people that we meet, you know, in France and Belgium, wherever, that World War II veterans, and we lost so many of them, didn't we? So many young guys, and then back in some of the assaults, so, you know, and Operation Overlord into the Omaha Beach was mostly Americans, one, and then 3 or 4 other beaches were Canadians, and the guys that were lost, we don't realize it sometimes. I was just reading just more recently that, like one landing craft hit a mine, and then the Germans found it lost 200 guys. That one event there. It's hard to believe. It's to make sure that they are not forgotten, what they were involved in, that their mission. Really, it's a time to free the world of tyranny, wasn't it?